what I love to do most is tell stories. And the reason I love to tell stories is because as wonderful as it is to look out at all of you, you cannot compare what it's like to look out at our children and capture their imagination. And if we don't look out at our children and capture their imagination, then what we do here today and after this day is a waste of time. Stories have the power to do that. Stories also have the power to capture adults, too. Because you see, what we start with is oral history. Every one of us, no matter where you are from on this planet, it's oral history that we start with. We were a country built of people who valued their oral traditions. If you were Spanish, if you were Celtic, if you were Irish, if you were Jewish, if you were Muslim, regardless, it's our oral traditions, the oldest stories on the planet upon which our bases of faith are, were oral first. We have a tendency when we become lettered to feel like our letters make us the leaders of intelligentsia. But I have found in my research, as I read stories from all traditions, and as I go into the archives and come across the stories of people that we have forgotten, those are the real powerful stories. And that's what we're talking about today. We're talking about a culture. A culture is more than its political alliances. A culture is more than its economic alliances. A culture is what stories we tell each other. That's what determines what the political alliances will be. That's what we're talking about today. People who are trying to take away our stories. So today I'm going to tell you two stories because I can get wound up, and if I don't get right to the point, I'm telling you, something happens. So I'm going to tell you two stories today from the oral tradition of African Americans in the South. There's a reason Joel Chandler Harris wrote down those stories. And the man that I'm talking about today wrote these stories down. They knew that they were going to be lost, so they put them in letters. And we have allowed people to make us ashamed of them, to make us want to forget about them, to make us, to have us say that if anything is good, anything good said about the South by people of African American descent, it's because they suffer from Stockholm Syndrome. Yeah. That's what we're fighting today. We are fighting a system that's intent on separating us. We are more separated today than we have ever been. If this audience reflected the South prior to the Civil War, 1/3 of the people in here would be of African American descent. What has happened? Those are the ones you could count on the census. It doesn't include the ones that slipped through. The ones who said, oh, I'm Jewish. Oh, I'm Portuguese. Oh, I'm Hispanic. Doesn't include those. If you include those, some cities, and if the population in here reflected it, some of the cities, 70% would be of African descent or a mixture thereof. Some 80. If you went out on the islands, 95. What has happened? Somebody has done a good job to separate us. It's our responsibility to come back together. And we do that by remembering all of the voices. So I'm going to start, and I just have to do this little bit. I'm sorry, who was it last night that talked about Columbus? Talking about removing Columbus Day? Sale, okay. My husband and I, Bill, had been doing something like that. So I want to add on to getting rid of Columbus. You know, not only should we get Columbus out of the way, but we need to stop growing rice. You know, because rice was the real first cash crop in the South. And, you know, it didn't come from China. It came when they went to get the slaves. That's when the rice came over. Because the slaves say, okay, if you're going to take me to work for you, I like eating rice. I've perfected eating rice. And so this is what I want to eat if I'm going to be your slave. So we need to get rid of rice. By all means, let's get rid of cotton. You know, if you got on cotton shirts here, you are racist. I mean, you know, after all, it's my ancestors that knew how to grow that cotton. And it's my ancestors, and when you come down to it, probably invented that cotton gin. And if he didn't invent it, one of the best cotton gin makers in Carolina was a black man, made the best cotton gins and shipped them all across the country. So we need, all across the South. So let's, for all manner, get rid of cotton, because that traumatizes me. I go down the highway, I will never forget the first time. I went down the Georgia highway, I was selling textbooks, went down the Georgia highway, looked, it was about September, I think, October, looked across the field, it was around 70 degrees, and it was snow as far as I could see. And I went, oh my God, look at that. And then it hit me, it's cotton. I'm still trying to get over the trauma. So if we are not going to, you know, get rid of cotton, let's at least figure out somehow that we can put up these wonderful screens that when I drive down the highway, I do not have to look over there and be traumatized by seeing cotton grown in the South. Okay? Sweet potatoes, let's get rid of them. Those black-eyed peas that we had last night, you're gonna have to get that off the menu, because you've got to be racist, because you see, they came from Africa too. So we can just go on and on. I'm working on that. I just wanted you to know that I was in line, that we don't have to stop with Columbus. Let's just take it on through. It is hilarious. But what we are seeing is just that ridiculous. Our knee-jerk reaction to our history in the South is just that ridiculous. Now, I will tell you stories. When I first met the man that would become my husband, I didn't know it at the time, Bill, he told me he was a member of the Sons of Confederate Veterans. He didn't put it in his profile. I met him over the internet. He did not put that in his profile. We went out on 2 dates before he told me that. I forgave him because I didn't tell him that I had been a member of the Nation of Islam. Okay? So I decided, let's see if this education that I paid for is worth it. Because education is supposed to prepare your mind to listen to somebody else's point of view. And that's what I try and tell children. When I tell them, and I sing the song, and the line says, Abe Lincoln is a fool, I almost lose them. They look up at their teachers and their parents, and they almost just pass out. To get a child to swoon is something, but they almost swoon, people. But I tell them it's okay. It's all right if you don't agree with me. It's all right that you've never heard that before, but you at least need to ask me, why? Why do you say that? I've never heard that before. It's something that I've never heard from my teachers. So why, Miss Barbara, why do you say that? And then if I can give you a reason or several reasons why I say Abe Lincoln is a fool, and you understand those reasons, and you know I'm not just calling him out and calling him names because I have nothing else to argue with, then you should be able to look at me and say, Miss Barbara, I still don't agree with you that Abe Lincoln is a fool, but I understand why you believe it. And understanding is what freedom is based on. The right to not agree, but understand each other. And then we can build bridges. Then we can proceed to come up with how we maintain this sense of freedom that does not exist anywhere else in the world. It's unique to us, and we should be proud of it. So, first story I'm going to tell you somewhat in Gullah. How many of you are familiar with Gullah? Good. I do not speak Gullah. But I came across a story, and I have come across stories that are written in a modified Gullah that are awesome. They're beautiful. The rhythm is unbelievable. The way the sentences are structured, you lose something if you don't tell it in some part of a modified Gullah. And Gullah is, for those of that don't know, particularly down the South Carolina coast, the Georgia Sea Islands, down to Florida, there were so many black folks that came into that part, that came into the country. Sullivan's Islands is black folks' Ellis Island. Most of us, if we came or were brought here as slaves or as free people, because you do realize that not every black person that set foot on this continent was a slave, right? Believe it or not, some of them paid passage in Africa, got on the ship and said, I'm going over to America. I hear there's good opportunity there. It's left out of the textbook, but it's true. Okay, so that part of it all happens when I speak. I tear stuff up, knock things over. Oh, well. Anyway, that Gullah is a blending of African American, Native American, and European American language, and it's strongly imposed on African structure of language, and it's beautiful. And if it's really spoken, none of us would know what anybody is saying. But I tell it because I want us to know that, like we said before, we were not homogeneous. We had different accents. We had different dialects, and we were proud of them, and we understood each other, and we should not be ashamed of them. And people of African descent have been made so ashamed, and who wouldn't? If you grew up, I'm almost 70 years old, 69 years old, no use in rushing it. But if you grew up when I did, you know what those movies were like of black folks and how they talked and how they shuffled and jived. Who would not be ashamed? But that wasn't really what Gullah was about. And it was Hollywood. It wasn't Gullah. So we have been ashamed of it. And you, as white folks, have been either ashamed or made to feel good because you could look over there and say, I may be poor, may not have anything, but at least I'm not as ignorant as that black person up there on that screen. That's what has happened in our country. We allowed it to happen. Now we've got to undo it. So, I'm going to tell it quickly in modified Gullah. Balan and Bagot. Balan been a hunt. Espy Bagot to lay down top a big rock to work at mountain chaw. Balan creep up for catch 'em. Bagot keep on chaw and chaw. Balan come close. Balan try and find out what Bagot to eat. You ain't seen nothing of them except in the naked walk what he to lay down on. Balan come close. Balan say, hey, Bagot, what honor to eat? Bagot scared when Balan rise up before him. But he keep a bold heart. It make the answer, me to eat this rock. And if honor don't left, when me done long 'em, me going to eat honor. Brother Lion, Brother Goat. Brother Lion went hunting. He saw Brother Goat laying on a great big old rock. Brother Goat was chewing. Brother Lion's trying to find out what's he eating. There's nothing there except in that naked rock. What's he eating? So he comes closer. And then he rises up and he says, hey, Brother Goat, what you eating? That scared Brother Goat. This big lion rising up before him. Brother Goat kept a bold heart. And he looked at Brother Lion and he said, I'm eating this rock. And if you don't leave, when I'm finished with it, I'm going to eat you. This next story, I'm going to read to you. And I read it because, like I say, you miss something if you don't read it. It is not in Gullah. It's taken from a collection of stories. It's called The Doctor of the Dead, Grotesque Legends and Folk Tales of Old Charleston, published by John Bennett in 1943, Reinhardt and Company, 1946, by the University of South Carolina in 1945. So John edited these stories. He lived from 1865 to 1956, and he was a novelist and an essayist and a poet. He was curator of the South Carolina History Society. He lived in Charleston, South Carolina during the first half of the 20th century and spent more than 3 decades assembling and editing stories. His interest in Gullah, in the Gullah language, and the storytelling tradition of Low Country African American prompted him to piece together shards and shreds of fable and folk tales told by local African American people. The name of the story. Let me ask you something. How many Sons of Confederate veterans here? Ah, good. my hat goes off to you. And I have my husband, like I say, he didn't tell me he was a son of Confederate veterans. But what we found out is that we both appreciated history. And we sat down and we had some very interesting discussions that weren't always civil on my part. My husband is always a gentleman. Bless his heart, I don't know how he does it, but he is. But we sat down and we talked. That's what we must do if we want to save our heritage. We must talk. And this room can't keep looking like this. It can't. Because you see, the Confederate Army didn't look like this. It didn't. The Army of the Dead. At the time of the Confederate War, Trumbull's Court was a dead-end street. But trapmen ran from Broad to Queen, and as that section of the city was beyond the range of the federal siege guns, a constant traffic, both by night and by day, flowed up and down the little street. After the war was over, the traffic left the little street, and the dust and the sand lay deep and still and quiet till midnight. Then, at the stroke of 12, the quiet street awoke to the sound of wheels rolling by. And the sound of wheels passing by in the night is a curious and intriguing sound. A moment before, except for the rustle of the palmettos and the light pattering of dew upon the roof, there was no sound whatever. But on the 12th stroke, everywhere came the sound of heavily burdened wheels, far too heavy for common wagon wheels. Not even the night soil wagon wheels could bring such a rumble from the earth, like far off thunder out at sea. And every now and then, a sonorous sound of metal heavily smitten. Every now and then, the iron lid of the manhole of the sewer at the corner lifted from the force of the air it compressed by the rising tide. The lid lifted, a gust of air blew out like the blast from a gun, and with a sound of clang of metal, the manhole lid fell back again upon the iron ring. But the sound in the street was another sound, utterly different, a rumble and a clang, heavy and deep. Every night, the laundress who lodged on the upper floor was awakened by the sound. Night after night, weary from a hard day, her sleep was broken. At last, spent by broken rest, she said to her husband, "Can't you do something to stop that noise in the night? It breaks my sleep, and I get no rest." Her husband angrily answered, "Jesus, woman, don't ask me that. It is no business of mine or yours. Don't speak of it." Why should I not speak of it? Because it is their affair and God's. I advise you to let it alone. So she did for a time, but still it troubled her. Who and what was it went by in the night, night after night after night, endlessly faring whither and whence. It troubled her the more, since she was quite often alone. One night, at the stroke of 12, the noise began. She got up from her bed and went to the window to open the shutter and look out into the street. She had taken but 2 steps when her husband overtook her and snatched her from the window, angry and trembling. "Use what little sense God gave you, woman," he said, "and let what you do not know alone." So that night, too, she let it alone. But the next day, she said to the woman at the next tub, "What is it goes by in the night?" The woman looked at her gravely, then said, "I take it that your heart is sincere in asking, and that you truly desire to know. For that reason, and that reason only, I speak. It is the army of the dead going by." Where on earth are they going? To reinforce Lee in Virginia. They are the dead who died in the hospital here before the war came to an end. At the end of the war came peace for the living, but no one could sign a peace for the dead. So they, not knowing that peace has come, rise from their graves at midnight and march off forever until Judgment Day to reinforce Lee in Virginia. While all still went well for the South, they slept and rested from battle. But when the armies of the North came crowding down and the army of the South began to bend, they who lay dead in the hospital yard pushed off their coffin lids, rose from their graves, and marched to strengthen the bending battle line. They do not know that peace has come. So until the last trumpet sounds, they rise and march to Virginia forever. That was what the woman at the next tub said. I am not bold, nor have I looked out my window to see that army marching by. Only fools meddle with things like that. But a woman in Trumbo's court looked out at night when the army of the dead went by. All she saw at first was the gray fog lifting in from the river and the mist lifting, lying cold and low in the hollow street among the gray tenements, the trees overhead only bunches of shadow in the fog, and the shredded fog drifting and trailing like smoke over the fence tops. Nothing more. There was no sound anywhere but the rustle of the palmettos and the dripping of the dew on the roof. But at the stroke of 12 came the sound of heavy wheels rolling and the smell of fog of horses and wet lather. The sound was a rumble, heavy and deep. There is no sound like it. It is the sound of cannon rolling along uneven ground. She could hear the horses grunt as they heaved their burdens through the heavy sand and over the obstructing roots of trees. She could hear the horses panting, and the fog grew thick with the hot steam rising from their lathered flanks. And with the panting of the horses, there was the sound of rough human voices, distinctly audible. She could hear the saddle leathers squeak and the trace chains rattle and the crack of the driver's whips. For hours, the rumble and the rattle kept on, with the stamping of horses, the shouts of teamsters, the chink of metal bits, the jingle of chains. Team after team came snorting by, the horses straining against their breast leather, tugging at their rumbling burden, the gray steam rising like fog from their flanks. And behind the sound of horses and cannon, and through it, the tramp of marching feet. Rump, rump, rump. Hosts of horsemen went riding by, with flags and banners trailing like fog, and rank after rank of foot soldiers in gray, their long uncut hair, their beards dripping with gathered mist. All night they marched, horse, foot, wagons, ambulance, cannon, and at the last, a belated wagon driving at a gallop to overtake the rest, whips creaking and cracking, horses snorting for wind. Then, far away and thin and faint, somewhere beyond Gadsden's green, shrill but muffled by the fog, came the notes of a bugle blowing. Then the cock crew, and all suddenly was still. Dazed and bewildered, she went back to her bed. When she woke in the morning, one arm was paralyzed, so that she never again could do a good day's wash. That is the legend of the army of the dead. Their names were not written in the book of peace. They ride as they rode, unrested ghosts, through the gray mist with banners as gray as the gray sea fog. They ride as they rode and stride as they strode with the tireless swing of veteran soldiery. Through the night, they pass like the wind through a by-street, marching to reinforce Lee in Virginia until Judgment Day. These were men who were hard to stop, who would not stay dead when slain, still hoping to wring desperate victory from the jaws of defeat. An unnumbered host rising like the mist from their shattered graves to the sound of far-off trumpets calling, the muffled beat of ghostly drums stepping their pace, the long, distant, destroying step of veteran soldiers, horse, foot, and artillery, with sabers and carbines clattering, with muskets over their thin shoulders and bayonets slapping their thighs, clad in coats as gray as the mist of the night. Death clamped them into meted graves after their victories and defeats, their bloody battles and weary marches unfinished behind them, and all unfinished before them. They march to reinforce Lee in Virginia, the army of the dead. That story was told by an African American woman, Mary Simmons, and he has a book of her. You think she didn't know about Black Confederates. It's the stories that we tell each other that preserves our culture. We are where we are today because we share in our slackness of how we have told our history. We must come together. The battle that our ancestors fought is nothing like the battle we're going to have to fight. It's far more sophisticated, and it is far more intense in its desire to destroy everything our ancestors and we stand for. We must come together and tell our stories proudly. I wish I was in the land of cotton. Old times there are not forgotten. Look away, look away, look away, Dixieland. In Dixieland, where I was born, early on one frosty morn, look away, look away, look away, Dixieland. Then I wish I was in Dixie. Hooray, hooray. In Dixieland I'll take my stand to live and die in Dixie. Away, away, away down south in Dixie. Away, away, away down